The call between the U.S. and Russian presidents effectively derailed the meeting between Zelenskyy and Trump and the expectations that came along with it. Now, after reports of President Trump warning Ukraine of total destruction if it continues fighting, what's next for Ukraine? And how is the Budapest Summit going to play out between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin? Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project, joins me in the studio to discuss possible scenarios and search for answers. Stephen, great to have you.
Here we are in
studio.
person, a rare event.
Yes, indeed. I was hoping that the next time we're going to speak in the studio was going to be about extra support from the U.S. for Ukraine, but here we are. So
There's still time.
There's still time. Let's hope for the best. So with everything that we saw over the past few days, with the phone call between Presidents Trump and Putin, with the meeting in Washington, do you think that the statements we've heard from President Trump are actually a clear sign that the U.S. is no longer going to actively support Ukraine? Are they taking a step back? How would you assess the situation? Do you think that Mr. Trump is going to change his mind again?
Klaudia, if I could get inside Donald Trump's head, I would be making a lot more money than I am now. But I will tell you this, it's all theater. You know, Donald Trump runs, he's a reality TV star. This is reality TV. It makes great TV. It's all drama. It's all performance. And it just is, unless you're, fighting on the Ukrainian front, and then it's a little bit less entertaining. Mm-hmm. And so, look, the fundamentals haven't changed. Donald Trump wants peace. He wants the war to stop. He wants the fighting to end. For whatever reason, that's what he wants. And Vladimir Putin wants to take over Ukraine. He wants to take over your country, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, all his neighbors. That hasn't changed. Those two things cannot exist in the same space. So at some point, there's going to be real friction and a real problem. And I think that Donald Trump's options are going to come to a close.
So you believe that countries such as Poland and the Baltic states have a very clear target marked on their back for Russia? Oh,
yeah, you would know better than me. So listen, I live in Kyiv. We got a lot more drones than you guys got, but you guys got your fair share, 19. That's a lot of love from Putin.
A lot of love from Putin. And speaking of Putin, during this conversation, Trump-Putin phone call on Thursday night here in Europe, what do you think that Putin said to Trump to actually change his mind to such an extent that from Ukraine can get its land back, we got to, if you don't make concessions, Ukraine will be destroyed? I mean, how do you get from paper tiger in September to a possible victor in October?
Yeah, again, that's a good question as well. I would say, one, there's news agencies that are reporting that. Some people say it's not as well sourced as we'd like to see it. I think Putin, Trump is denying it.
So there's a lot of
right
confusion
now.
still.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that there's a lot of confusion. As you point out, it doesn't really fit in with everything that goes on, and there's some speculation in Washington that has to do with John Bolton and people that are friends with John Bolton leaking information that's not true, all this sort of stuff. Again, it's all theater. And, but,
And meanwhile, people's lives are lost.
Yeah, I have friends at the front. Yeah. I have a lot of friends at the front. I go to the front. I was in, so Steve Witkoff says, can't you just give up these little pieces of land in Donetsk?
Isn't that the salami tactic? 2014, Crimea, and now we're looking at Donbass.
Yeah. Well, I was in Slavyansk. I was in one of those places about a month ago. I asked around. Nobody thought it was a good idea. Nobody said, hey, you know what? Let's do that. If it'll be peace for everywhere else, if we can give up our land, let's do it. In fact, no one believed there'd be peace, and no one wanted to give up their land. And so and what Putin wants out of it, he's been attacking Ukraine for 11 years. He's been trying to get these little chunks of Donbass for 11 years. He's not able to do it. So, and the reason it's important is not because, Donbass is so wonderful, but, these areas of Donetsk are where the Ukrainians have fortified. This is their Maginot Line, if you want to go back 100 years. And Putin hasn't been able to take it and so he wants to be given to him diplomatically.
So we have this stark warning from Donald Trump to Zelenskyy that we've just heard. We've also heard during the NATO meeting in Brussels, we've heard from Pete Hegseth, who said if Russia is going to be the aggressor, if they are going to continue the war in Ukraine, there's going to be a certain response from the U.S. So we have this constant shift. Do you think that with how things are standing right now and with the United States being one of the crucial parts of the NATO alliance, does Europe have a lot to worry about in terms of its own security?
Europe has a lot to worry about in terms of its own security, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C. And, I think that most of us agree that, have been following Ukraine or live in the shadow of Russia, that Russia and China are working together. China, Russia's a client state of China. North Korea, sends soldiers into Ukraine. And, the remnants of Iran are also pretty, well in tune with the rest of this, axis of unkindness. And so I think that we're in a global war right now, and I think that Europe's firepower is needed. Europe needs to, Europe. The things that Europe creates. Every time I'm in Europe, I get a little pop-up every time I go to a website. It says, "Do you want to accept all these cookies or do you not?" Right? That's not what Europe needs to focus on. Europe needs to focus on building better drones, building better defense systems. That's the if that little pop-up screen that says "accept all cookies" that delays my entry into a website by 3 seconds, if that's like the best European entry into technology, we need help.
Well, this is something that we also discussed during the Warsaw Security Forum some time ago here in Warsaw, how the European Union, by its very nature, was supposed to be a peace union, a union of peace, not a military union. So there have to be a lot of changes made in order to be able to make that security happen. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, said that Ukraine cannot just surrender, adding that rewarding aggression would be encouraging actors such as Russia to push forward. What do you think is going to be Europe's next step as we see the situation unfold? With that possible summit in
I scrolled
Budapest.
through the news. I scrolled through the news before I came in here, and I saw a lot of things Europe was thinking about doing. Europe's thinking about cutting off their gas from Russia by 2028. That's 16 months from now. Is that right? That's even that's a lot longer from now. That's a long time. And so they're thinking about taking action against Russia's ghost fleet. Europe thinks about a lot of things. Europe, ponders. And again, countries like yours that have lived under the Soviet Union know what it's like. If you don't know what it's like, you think about a lot of things. If you're like Poland, you spend a whole bunch of money on defense, and you try to get everyone else to do the same thing.
I mean, make no mistake, Poland's been, and the Baltic states have been actively warning Europe about the potential danger from Russia for quite some time right now. So I suppose this is another lesson learned. As a final question, tomahawks. This is something that was supposed to be a big subject of the conversation in Washington. According to Zelenskyy, some European countries also are in possession of tomahawks, and if U.S. gives green light, they could proceed in supplying Kyiv with these tomahawks. Do you think that this is a possibility worth exploring?
Yeah, I mean, the key here for Ukraine, I mean, look, so Trump had a lot of success in the Middle East. And the reason he had the success is because the Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran were thoroughly defeated. Neither side is thoroughly defeated in this war. And in fact, Russia's getting the snot beat out of it right now. And part of it is because of the ability of Ukraine to send long-range strikes and do away with Russian defense installations. And, they've cut off
refineries.
Yeah. Try to buy gas in Russia. Try that. Yeah. So Ukraine is on a roll. And, Russia is teetering because its economy is suffering. So, let's make sure one of these parties, Russia, feels the defeat, and then it'll be a lot easier to get a peace agreement.
Final one. Do you think that Zelenskyy, if the Budapest Summit is going to take place, is going to be invited? Bad PR, bad marketing on that one. So of course, Budapest, the site of the 1994 agreements that Russia violated in 2014. So not a really good place to do it.
But listen, I think, Zelensky needs to be at the table. And it's not useful. There's a lot of folks out there, Hegseth wore a tie that looks largely like the Russian tie. But you know what? American colors are red, white, and blue as well. And so talking about these...
The perspective.
Well, but talking about these things is not helpful, right? Hegseth wore a tie. It's in Budapest. What happens is that Zelensky needs to go and engage. What happens is that the pro-Ukraine community needs to get messages out about Ukraine is winning and Ukraine can win. And talking about Hegseth's tie doesn't move the needle for anybody. It's kind of funny, but doesn't get more weapons for Ukraine.
Well, let's hope the next time we meet in the studio, we're going to have slightly more positive things to talk about in regards to Ukraine and them winning the war.
Hey, I'm positive every day.
Thank you so much for joining me. Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project.
Thanks, Klaudia.
Pleasure as always. And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more.